Hi, I'm Dajana Yoakley. I'm a peaceful parenting coach and mom of three, and I'm delighted to give you the latest science backed research on child development, parenting, and to support you in showing up as the parent that you want to be. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining me today on the podcast. I have an amazing guest with me. I have here with me Debbie Steinberg Kuntz, the founder of Bright and Quirky. Welcome, Debbie.
Thanks, Dajana. Great to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. We had such a great conversation on my self-compassion summit. We talked about how to support our children while also taking care of ourselves with lots of self-care, self-nurturing, and kind of how we can support the parent. But today's conversation is a little different topic, and I'm really excited because I know you have lots of expertise in this. And today we're talking about how can parents support a child that is struggling with making friends or maybe with a social loneliness and feeling separate from others? So yeah, I'm really excited that you're bringing this topic to our audience today because I think it's so prevalent in many children's lives. So yeah, do you want to kind of kick us off with that topic and what we can expect?
Absolutely. And we just did a deep dive event with Caroline McGuire, the author of Why Will Nobody Play With Me? So she and I collaborated, and I just learned so much from her. So definitely check out her book. But we have a lot of kids who I call bright and quirky or just quirky, who might be struggling with signs of ADHD, anxiety, depression, um, learning disabilities, autistic spectrum, and they can find it hard to make friends for different reasons. Either maybe they are compared to their same age peers kind of silly and goofy, or they've got lagging social intuition. There are a lot of reasons why our kids have trouble making friends, but it's very real. And we had about 1,000 parents in this event,
Wow.
and we had great tools to share. So I just want families to know that these are sort of muscles. These tools can be learned, and these muscles for socializing can be built. And all your child needs is one friend and a spare. So please don't feel like you need a whole soccer team full of friends. Really, they just need one friend and a spare.
Oh, I love that. So basically is that like that's kind of based on like the science or kind of the really what's necessary for them to feel included and feel like they belong. They need to find one friend. And then the spare, is that like somebody that's like a backup plan? Like
Because what if your friend moves away, or
yeah,
you have
yeah.
a fight, or you want a backup waiting in the wings.
Yeah. No, that's so powerful. I love that. So it kind of the burden of on the parent doesn't feel like you said like you need like a whole like a big group of kids that can come to the party, right? The birthday party or something. Like if you have a birthday party and you invite the best friend or the close friend and maybe the backup friend, that's good enough for the kid because the attention is then probably even more impactful because they get to have a closer interaction with that child that is there.
Yeah, and maybe when your child's younger, we're inviting the whole class or the whole team to the birthday party. And then as they get older, we're inviting fewer and fewer kids. And, I would ask your child, you know, who would you really enjoy having at this party versus like having to invite the whole
Hmm.
class? Who shares
Right.
your interests? Stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'd love for you to break it down a little bit in terms of kids that are maybe neurodiverse or struggle with social anxiety or whatever may be the driving factor of their lack of friendships. What kind of how do they get to where they're at? Like how what are some of the driving factors maybe a little bit on that of how why it is so hard for some kids to make friends and socialize.
Our kids have different kind of profiles. So like your young boy with ADHD might be really silly and goofy. And Caroline talked about reading the room, which I think is so
Mm.
important. And we lived through this with one of my kids, and these skills and the awareness comes over time. That let's look at these group of people. What are they? Let's read the room. What are they doing with their bodies? What are they saying? How are they reacting to this joke or these faces that we're making? Um, so, raising awareness about what is going on in the room. And then maybe it's time to calm our body. Maybe we are doing something that would be better done at a different time and place, like being silly and goofy on the playground or in our bedroom or in our backyard, and sort of learning that there are certain times for different kinds of behavior is important. And then another profile child who maybe they don't know what social cues to give. Like maybe someone asks them a question and they don't answer. And in
Yeah.
their head, some of our kids have slower processing speed. So they might be thinking about the answer, but the listener might think they're getting blown off. So then we want to teach them skills like, I need to think about that for a minute, or hmm, or just the little cues we might give off to say, here's what's going on in my head. I'm actually working on an answer, but I need an extra moment. And then we have our kids who, for whatever reason, experience peer rejection, whether it's mean kids or bullying or, really painful, difficult stuff that's potentially traumatizing. This is when we want to bring in some outside help to not only teach the skills of friendship and the tools, but also to do some healing on potentially traumatizing experiences. It can be rejection is just one of the hardest things. And so from that, what I really suggest that parents do, especially if we're, in search of that one friend in despair, is lean into a child's interests. How many times have you been involved in something that you enjoy and you met other people who enjoy the same thing? And so, whether your child really enjoys robotics or coding or soccer or World War II airplanes or,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is, if we can sort of be opportunity makers for our kids and um, I like to call it being a self-scientist and running experiments. So, hey, you love to dance to music at home. Let's go try a hip hop class. You only have to try one. Let's give it a shot. Or you love taking toasters and computers apart. Let's go find a maker space near where we live. And chances are, when you are doing something that you love or you're curious about, you will meet other like minded people, even if they're not in school. So, really broaden um, your thoughts about where you might make these friends too.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, yeah, I think that's such like wise advice because that common interest is what keeps the conversation going too. Like it's like if you go do an activity that you don't really have that much of an interest in, it's just like a one-off, you might meet some people there, but the sustainability of that relationship is is declined because you're not going back to that like regularly and you don't talk about that stuff all the time, but if it's something that you're drawn to regularly, especially your child likes to do that all the time or often, that's what they're thinking about too, and who else to talk to about that than others that are in the same boat, right?
Exactly, exactly. And then, when kids have some trouble with conversation, we want to share with them that conversation is like a tennis game. I serve the ball to you, you
Love
return the
that.
ball, I return the ball. Caroline's got a tool called Build on That, where we can build on the conversation. So we can practice that at the dinner table. Like, honey, I just asked you a question about how your day was or your favorite food or something like this. And if we don't have that natural social intuition, then we'd want to prompt our child. Now it's your turn to hit that tennis ball back over to my side. What question do you want to ask me? And we might have to make these things very explicit if we don't have
Yes.
that natural intuition there.
Oh, yes, for sure. It's such a practice, like, and so much of parenting is a practice, but when we focus on our own kind of to-do list and the agenda, like it slips your mind to like be so explicit in like so directive, but, you know, in a playful way too, right? Because, you know, I want to talk about too, like how I think for parents sometimes the anxiety of seeing your child struggle and feeling like, "Ah, it's an emergency, my child has no friends," and now you might helicopter parent a little bit, or you freak out more than they're freaked out, or, you know, you start having these dark, like fast forward thoughts about their future. And it might be just a phase, or maybe one of their friends moved and now they're alone. um, Kind of goes hand in hand with like, how do we practice this on a daily basis and kind of build these skills like daily? Because, you know, the days are long. There's lots of time in a given day with a child, but then the years fly by. So, like, how can we soothe our own
Yeah.
anxiety and still be conscious of like practically implementing these tools so that we are building
Yeah.
skills? Because it takes so long to build skills too, you know?
Yeah. There's a book that came out last year called The Good Life, and it sort of summarized the findings of the Harvard study of adult development. This study is the longest longitudinal study going on. It's been going on over 85 years. They looked at so many different pieces of data to see what leads to a healthy adult life, and the findings were fascinating. And one of them, probably the main key finding of this study so far, is that the happiest, most satisfied people have positive relationships in their life. Now, our kids might say, I don't want to make a friend, or I
Yeah.
rather be online. And, you know, knowing what we know now about the research, I think it is wise to think about at least one friendship and a spare being as important as eating vegetables,
Yeah.
getting exercise, getting good sleep. So I would take I don't want any friends to mean the same thing as I don't want to go to sleep and I don't want to eat vegetables. We're going
Uh-huh.
to do some healthy nudging, some environmental design to make it easy. You know, like
Yeah.
our kids might not grab an apple, but if we cut it into sections and put it in front of them, they'll eat it. You know, hey, there's this
Yes.
thing going on, music at the park. Let's go check it out. And I think that's sort of a pitfall I want parents to be aware of, that asking yes no questions about friendship, like, do you want to go here to potentially meet people, or do you want to talk to this person? If you ask a yes no question, there can be a no. So I really like instead saying the word let's go check this out, it looks fun, let's go see what it's like, let's be self-scientists and run this experiment.
Mhm.
It's a way to create a little more momentum and motivation.
Mhm, mhm. And when you're joining your child as, you know, another calm nervous system, their anxiety about the social interaction minimizes compared to if you were just to say like, I want you to go talk to that kid and go say, hi, my name is whatever. But if you're doing it together, that bond, you're on the same team, regulates their nerve. It's co-regulation, right? Because you're going together in this environment that they don't really want to go in, but at least together it's easier than if you were to ship them off alone with an agenda.
Yeah, for sure. And you bring up a great point in mentioning social anxiety, which is a diagnosis. And if it's really getting in the way of your child leading their life, then you're going to want to pull in a therapist into your village, and one that does preferably CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And for some kids, it is too anxiety provoking to say, hey, go talk to that child, or they need to slice it thinner to a little step,
Mhm,
and they
mhm.
call these exposures, a little step that is a little more tolerable. So maybe we're looking at videos of the playground on YouTube first, or you know, in different situations maybe we're looking at birthday parties, or movie clips of birthday parties and what is going to happen at the birthday party. And you know, a great tool for a lot of kids these days is looking at their phone when they feel socially uncomfortable. And I know young kids who didn't even want necessarily the functionality of the phone. They
Yeah.
just wanted to be looking down at something when all their friends were looking down at a device, you know? So there are lots of little tips and tricks to decrease that anxiety and dip your toe in the pool in a like smaller step kind of way.
Yeah, and as you're talking about like that, being in that social setting and the anxiety around other people, I can't help but ask about the emotion of shame and how that plays in with people's experiences in a social setting. Because shame is like, it's like the emotion of where you're in your head thinking about what the other person is thinking about you, and they're thinking about you in a negative construct. And now you've created this, you know, if it's kind of like self experience shame. Now, somebody could be shaming you, which would be different. But if you feel shame in a social setting, it's basically like you feel like you don't belong. And it makes you not want to go back, right? So any thoughts or discussions around how we can support our kids with reducing feelings of shame in a social situation when it is kind of like self created?
Yeah. Yeah.
What people are thinking about me, I wonder what they're thinking about. They're judging me. They don't like me, whereas you don't know what
Yeah.
they're
And
thinking.
I totally empathize with that because if you experience social rejection, I mean that can definitely take root. So I think we need to make a very important distinction here
Mhm.
when we're reading the room. We can read the room and make observations, kind of like a scientist. We put our little imaginary white coat on and we record what we observe. Like this person is standing in the hall near the water fountain talking to two other people. Now, that observation is totally different than mind reading, which is one of the cognitive distortions. You can Google cognitive distortions. It's one of the games our mind plays on us, which is not observing. It's, oh, those kids are standing by the water fountain and they're talking about me and what I did the other day or what I'm wearing, and I can't wait to get lost. And we really need to check for evidence if
Mhm.
the story we're telling ourselves is actually accurate. I heard one person say, I'm too good at reading the room. I fill in all the blanks that,
Yeah, yeah.
that are beyond the observation of that I think that are going on. But we really have to check, we shouldn't believe everything we think. We
Right.
need to really evaluate, are we observing or are we mind reading?
Yeah, and it can be so hard because the mind is part of what you're like, that is like, is that the checker or is that the, which role is it playing? And if it's playing both negative roles, then it's like you can't win because you're so absorbed in it. It's so hard to separate yourself. And yeah, when we're talking to kids about like being that social detective, I like that. It's much more about, I guess the way I see it is like, is the lens focused on you in the room or is the lens focused on the other person? When you're a social detective, you're a detective about other people's behaviors. Your experience isn't like necessarily part of that. You're observing them versus if you're watching yourself in this room, then you're very self-conscious and that shame spiral can kick in, I think.
Yeah. We talk a lot about, especially for kids on the spectrum, um, almost like being their magical tour guide. I remember when I lived in Japan for a year as part of my junior year abroad. Um, this is very common in Japan, at least at that time, was in the bathroom. There's like a shower station with soap. All the family members shower when they're ready to go in. And then there is no soap in the bathtub. You go in the bathtub for a soak, kind of like a hot tub. And there's
Uh-huh.
like an electric thing that keeps it warm. And all the foreigners bring the soap in the bath. So they said, when you're going to live with a Japanese family, do it their way and don't bring
Mhm.
the soap in the bath. And that's sometimes how we need to talk with our kids who, don't come wired with that social intuition, to say, let's look at the customs and the culture of the people in this place. What are other people doing? Like when you go to Italy, they probably whirl the pasta with their fork versus cutting it with a fork and knife. What do people do here? And that's the whole idea of being a social spy or social detective. and you can narrate this as a parent to say, oh, these kids are taking turns to go down the slide. This child is waiting for the swing nearby, so the other person knows that they're waiting. So when we can narrate the social clues that we see, then our kids can develop their awareness of how things are done in this particular place if they're sort of lagging that intuition naturally.
Oh, I love that because it reminds me of like we're letting them borrow almost like our prefrontal cortex observer, like that foresight, right? Like the fill in the background where maybe they just don't have that yet, or maybe they're misconstruing it in a way that's not helpful. And so we're like joining, and that verbal. Love that. Like I think parents forget this, and I know I do sometimes, so much of the time, but like that narrative out loud. We may be thinking through all this ourselves in our heads, but our kid can't read our mind. And if we can put it into words during like the day-to-day routines, because we have plenty of routines like in parenting, right? Like we might not have a lot of extra time for like courses and all this stuff, but we have plenty of routines with our kids. And if we can at least be more verbal in narrating what is happening, that is beneficial. We can squeeze in some of these mini lessons in kind of social skills and supporting them.
Right, because there's always an elegant logic why a challenge exists. And
Uh-huh.
it might be because the child is not sort of decoding what's happening in this situation. And I remember talking to a woman on the autistic spectrum, and she said, excuse me.
Hmm.
She said, I'm not clear when we have a meeting at work. When does the meeting end and we go into chit chat, and when can I be excused? And so she talked to her manager about that and said, could you kind of say, thanks for a great meeting, or give me some sort of cue that the official meeting has ended and the chit chat has begun? And so even adults are doing this, and it's great if we live in a neurodivergent friendly school community, family community, work community, and we can help with these cues. So I'd say parents, if your kids need these cues or they have friends over, it's just a really nice way to keep those social tennis games and conversations flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. What would you say to parents that feel like, maybe my kid is acting like this because I act like this? Maybe they realize, like, light bulb moment, like, I'm just like my kid. I'm just adapted in the adult world in a way that I've constructed my adult world in a way where I don't have to maybe socialize so much, or, or whatever. Like maybe the parent kind of compensates or masks or whatever because, neurodivergence runs genetically in families too. And how can parents relate to that? Like if they feel like they don't have the social skills to necessarily even point some of this out to their kid, where can they start? How can they start?
Well, I would point them to the work of Caroline McGuire. I think she's doing a lovely job. And then there's the Peers Clinic at UCLA. They have a peers program, and that's fabulous. And I guess parents, it's great to be vulnerable and say, I have strengths in certain areas, and this area for me is a challenge. So we're working on this together. Let's be
Yeah.
self-scientists together. Let's go to Starbucks, observe what's happening in the coffee shop. Let's go to the playground and observe together. And we will learn together. I think that's actually really cool.
Yeah, yeah. And again, that togetherness, because even if I'm thinking of it in that way, like maybe the parent doesn't create enough opportunities for themselves to have social, practice these social skills, or to have to kind of push themselves into these uncomfortable settings, they still are engaging with their child. And that conversation and the interaction they have with their child is social interaction in the home. So at minimum, they're practicing this with their child. And the more, I guess, yeah, the more they practice kind of these um, more socially acceptable ways to engage with others with their child, the more equipped their child will be in the school setting or in their future work. Or maybe they won't have to mask so much like the parent is, or maybe they won't have to avoid certain situations that are uncomfortable socially. They won't have to create kind of the alter their life to avoid those social interactions.
Yeah. And, we all have people that we want to spend more time with, and maybe people we want to spend less time with. And so, in the book, The Good Life, they really talk about, they even have like a little graph where you can plot your different relationships and
Yeah.
say, this is one that really energizes me that I want to spend more time with. This is one that drains me. And I think it's a very healthy exercise to get out a sheet of paper and say, these are the people I don't see frequently that I would like to see more often, or these are the ones I see often that I would like to see more frequently or less frequently. Um, and intentionally construct your social life. I think there's a lot of value to do that.
So what if kids are, they have friends, but they're online, or, they go to school, but then they come home and they get online with their friends. And they might, who knows how they're socializing at school. Half the time you don't know what happens at school, right? They don't bring it all home. But assuming that, they have some friends that they know in person, but then outside of school, kids don't play in the streets anymore. They all like either do group chats or they do video games online, or I guess if they're a little older, they're on social media, like sending each other messages and stuff. Does that count for the Harvard study for close relationships? Does that give you points for that, even if it's virtual? Or does it have to
Yes.
be in person or on Zoom or something?
Virtual friendships are real friendships. I don't think anybody's recommending 100% virtual relationships.
Yeah.
Like if your child's going to go online and play video games with your friends. You're going to build fun and friendship time with your friends that way. But Caroline McGuire, the social expert, she said one of the sort of signs, if you have a social puzzle to solve or problem to solve, is can you make new friends? Can you
Mm.
make new friends online, and can you make new friends offline when you go in a room of people? And I know that can be very intimidating for a lot of people, but if you're going to spend time with them, you're going to spend time um, diving into your interests with other people. Can you reach out and do you know how to make a new friend? And if not, that's when you want to do some extra work on this, either by reading Why Will No One Play With Me, or getting a social coach, or doing one of those programs. So yes, it counts, but we also need at least one friend and a spare in real life.
Yeah. So it's almost like, is the like, are you going online as a default because it's too debilitating to socialize in the real world, or is it a choice? You can socialize in the real world and you can make new friends and you can make them online. It's just right now you're choosing to go online because you want to play video games, right? It's like, I guess that's kind of the question. Like, is it forcing you to just go online, or is it a conscious choice where you could have the in-person friend too? You're just online right now.
Right. And something we saw with the pandemic is that when we were so isolated, we had some social atrophy happening. People like sort of weren't
Mm.
using those muscles, and so they kind of weakened.
Uh-huh.
And so if kids are like, "Hey mom, I'm only interested in these people online." We want to say that's okay, and we're going to run some self-scientist experiments to broaden your social life in real life. Just like we would say if our child's like, I don't want to eat any healthy foods, we would say, you know what, we're going to run experiments to find just a few healthy things you can tolerate, so you're not just eating, white bread, white rice, and chicken nuggets. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to keep
Mm-hmm.
nudging a healthy agenda as parents. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
same with friendship.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. And social, I mean, social stuff is so hard. It's so complicated for parents. Like, it can feel so overwhelming because we don't have PhDs in social skills ourselves, right? And that shame, I think, that humans feel when they feel like they don't belong, we feel that for our child, and we never want them to be alone and feel like they're excluded and rejected. So I know it's a really big pain point, especially as they get into like, late elementary school years and middle school, and I'm not even sure about high school yet with my kids, but I know it's such a pain point. Any other kind of final words to to kind of send parents off with if they're, kind of feeling worried, kind of mind shifts, sets.
Yeah, I would spend some time really focusing on this. Caroline McGuire's book, Why Will No One Play With Me is really excellent. And just be willing to narrate and observe. And she's just got some wonderful tips in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess just like getting started, like you got to start. Like it might not be like the choice of work that you would like to do right now, but it's what your kid needs, right? And finding ways to support them.
Yeah, and you can start by being curious, like, tell me, like, if you had a map of your friends at school, like, who would be on the map?
Mm-hmm.
Do you hang out with them in class, on the playground? What about, um, doing science labs together? Like, who is in your world? Who would you want to spend more time with or less time with? What happens in PE? Just start getting really curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then that allows them to broaden their own like view of what is happening. Oh, and maybe there are some controllables there. Maybe some things are not controllable, but maybe there's something they can do. Like, what can you do now to in that situation, or what would you do? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
Thank you so much. Would you share a little bit about where people can find out more about your work and the resources you have for parents?
You bet. So my organization is brightandquirky.com, and we work with bright kids with learning, social, and emotional challenges. And I love our community. We're also going to be starting a community for bright and quirky adults coming soon. No announcements have been
Ooh,
made, but that is coming
awesome.
soon. And yeah, check it out. We have something called the Idea Lab, which is our membership where we invite the best psychologists and have coaches and a big video library for anybody wondering how to raise a bright and quirky child. Today, we talked about social development. We also talk about emotional regulation, executive function, screen overuse, physical factors, self esteem, school and learning, all the good stuff.
Oh my gosh, it's also interrelated too.
It is. It is.
So awesome. Thank you so much. This has been really insightful, and we'll link your resources below. Really appreciate your time.
Wonderful. Thanks, Diana. I appreciate yours.
Thank you.